Hey, Chris.
Hey,
How's it going, man?
pretty good. Just gonna try microphone to work today.
You're very quiet. Maybe it's just my volume. I'll turn that up.
There. Is that better?
Yeah, that is. Just looking at the green
Yep.
bars on your profile thingy.
Yeah. So is it just us? I think.
Yeah, it looks like it.
All right.
As I get this show on the road.
So sorry, we're doing starting campaigns. That's the
Yeah, so basically I was talking about how you envision a campaign, like how you plan it,
okay.
what goes into it. And then
So not like forming a group and stuff like that.
No. Like you've got
Okay.
a group and then, just how you kind of come up with campaigns. And then also going right into how you kind of intro it in the very first session.
Okay.
And do you have
Sounds
any
good.
media or anything you want to talk about before we dive into stuff?
I wouldn't mind talking about Ant-Man a little bit.
Okay, yeah, cool. Actually, absolutely. So we'll do the intro, then the drink check, and then we'll do Ant-Man. Sweet.
Yeah, and then when do you leave for Gen Con? That's next week, right?
Yeah, next Wednesday.
Yeah.
So this won't be out tomorrow, but it'll be out Wednesday. And then, I actually want to talk about what I'm doing at Gen Con in case people give a rat's ass.
Cool.
All right,
Okay.
cool. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Accidental Survivors. This is Fraser.
And this is Chris.
And we are a party of 2 this episode. That's all you need, really.
That's right. I mean, everybody else is just window dressing anyways.
It's so true. And you are kind of 2. I'm not, what? Did I say that? No.
What? Oh.
Ooh. So, hey,
Okay.
drink check. What are you drinking?
I have a Boddington's Pub Ale.
There you go. Wow.
Oh, yeah.
That sounded robust coming through the mic.
That's very good. And I don't know if it's a seasonal beer or what, but I haven't seen it at the LCBO for like a few months now, and it's depressing.
Now, the last time that you had Boddington, I'm pretty sure I looked it up, and it's owned by the same company that owns Guinness. Now, Guinness does, so I think InBev has distro rights to Guinness, but they don't actually manufacture it in Ireland. So it's different. Like Labatt's is wholly owned by InBev. But if I remember correctly, when I was researching Boddington's, it's the same company, and they're not wholly owned by InBev. They are their own company, but I guess distribution outside of the UK maybe is InBev?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to see if it said anything on the brewed in the UK and distributed by AMB InBev. Yeah, UK Limited. Yeah.
But I mean, like, so if they're wholly owned by InBev, then you should be able to get it just like you'd get, like Labatt's or whatever. But
yeah, weird. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe like it's not one that I see plentiful at the LCBO, like
right.
even certain times of the year. But like I said, I haven't seen it for months, so maybe I'm the only one drinking it.
Entirely possible.
But it's delicious.
Oh no, okay. Boddington is owned wholly by AB InBev. Yeah, okay. I must have been thinking of something else then. I'm glad I looked it up. I didn't want to give wrong information to our 2 listeners.
What do you have this lovely evening?
Well, I've got me a bone shaker.
Yes.
It's kind of my jam. Between that and Mad Tom, that's kind of what I've been drinking recently. Even more so than like Detour and Cruise. Like Detour is the lighter Mad Tom, and Cruise is the lighter Bone Shaker. But
okay, so we're kind of at the opposite ends of the spectrum tonight. Not quite, but
Bone Shaker 7.1%.
Yeah, mine's only a 4.6, but definitely not an IPA.
For some reason, I really enjoy the strong bitter taste of IPA these days.
Yeah, see, I find it's got like strong and bitter, but to me almost sour.
Yeah, a little. I can see that. Yeah, for sure. Especially like one of the problems with IPAs and other beers similar to that is that if you eat the wrong thing before you try to drink it, it really messes up the taste.
Sure. But I mean that I was going to say that can work with many beers, like sweets and stouts are not a bad combination, but salty and stout is fantastic.
I think beers with stronger characters are more affected by the things that you're eating. Whereas, I mean, like the lighter, and also the industrial style beers, which really have no character whatsoever, are they're not palatable. Number one for me, but for people that drink it,
it's just like drinking water.
Exactly.
Kind of takes on it's almost more taking on the flavor of what you're drinking than having its own distinct character to it. Like even Coke, like regular Coca-Cola, I find has more personality than a lot of that weak ass beer.
Oh God, yeah, absolutely.
It's good. Oh, I mean, like you have, it's also the acid level. Like you have, if you're eating spicy food and you have Coke, it's not a good combination because the acids in the Coke really accelerate the bitterness of the spices bring. But yeah,
very true. And I'm actually looking forward to going back to Indianapolis to try some of the lovely craft brews that are there. Because as people that follow me elsewhere might know, I will be at Gen Con. Unfortunately, the rest of the crew won't be there. I mean, Chris, you were there last year.
That's right.
A couple of friends, but not with any of us.
Right. And then, I don't know next year right now. I mean, it's a year away, so I don't have any plans. I was kind of on an every other year schedule, but then I went like 2 in a row. And then this year, I mean, it would have been nice to go and get away, but there's a lot of good reasons why I'm, ultimately now glad I didn't go away this year.
Yeah. Understood.
It sucked.
And next year, I mean, like my wife might be working. We'll probably have a new home at that time. So I don't think I'll be going next year, but possibly the year beyond. Once things have calmed down, we'll see.
Yeah.
But we've had a really good run of it, honestly.
Yeah. So we've always had for the last, 5 years now?
So I went 2008, then 2011, 2013. Yeah, 2008, 2011, 2013, and I'll be going this year, 2015.
So then I went 11, 13, 14.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's been good. It's enjoyable. I mean, we've talked about this before, so we don't really need to run it into the ground. But I kind of thought I wanted to go once just to get out of my system to say that I've been there and done it. But now that I've gone, I enjoyed it, and I definitely want to go back.
It's going to be interesting for me this year. I mean, last year you went. I mean, it wasn't with us, but it was with friends. Like you were with a group, right?
Yeah, but I mean, for the most part, we kind of scattered, right?
Yeah.
So. Brett was off kind of doing his own thing. James I ran into, and we sort of chummed around for a while. But largely we're kind of, because we have common interests, but Brett's like, excuse me, really into the anime.
Yep.
Whereas I am not. And then, and James is more into, he was just kind of general shopping, and I was really more into testing and demoing games, and he was doing that too, but we kind of, we'd hook up and bounce apart. And so it was a very much more solo experience last year. Still good, but and I mean, I ran into some of the other people that I kind of normally run into, but it never really, I don't know, I just wasn't, I was having my own kind of a chill Gen Con experience, which was nice. It's very different though.
But this year is going to be quite different for me because I'm going to be working most of it.
Yeah. Now, are you getting, I mean, I know you can go as you're publishing, but are you also, you didn't get anything comped for running stuff, right? Because that's not, like, I know if you do games on demand, they'll put you up in things.
I think I actually probably could have, because I am running 16 hours of games.
Yeah.
I've got 4 games running, each of them 4 hours. So I mean, I could have. I ended up getting. I applied through Sword's Edge to get the. I probably should have done through Accidental Survivors, but anyways, I do it every year through Sword's Edge, so I got a press one. This year, because I'm running most of my stuff through the Independent Game Developers Network.
Okay.
And I mean, there's still Gen Con games, but I wasn't sure how passes were going to work, and I really wasn't sure what I was going to be doing. I just knew I wanted to go.
Well, I was thinking more for the rooming. Like, if you do the so many hours, they'll put you up, but then you'll get stuck in a room with 4 strangers, which I guess, because now you got a bit of a crew going with you too, don't you?
Actually, nobody. So luckily, Jason Petrie, who wrote Spark and has been on the show, and we've mentioned a bunch of times, he's going down. So I'm rooming with him.
Okay.
We both had our passes early, and we both we were in the rush to get rooms.
Yep.
The best that I could get was out by the airport, and he had got one right at the where's the one that we always stay, the Marriott?
Oh, the Ambassador.
Yeah, something
Embassy,
like that. Embassy, that's it. Yeah. So Embassy Suites. he got a room there. So I'm just like, dude, if you don't mind, I want to crash with you. And he was like, for sure. So I'm not sure if there's other people that are going to be there, but that's really the only person that I usually hang with that's going to be there.
Okay.
Becca and Evan are going to be there, and we're going to have a game.
Yep.
And JJ Lanza and his guys are going to be there, and we're going to have a game as well.
Cool.
And those are the two like fun games.
I'm trying to think. Isn't Wayne going this year, or am I missed?
Not Wayne. Mike Zwick is going to be there.
Yeah. Well, he I think goes every year, or
yes,
he's been there every year that I've been there, anyways.
Yeah. Victor's going to be there.
Yep.
Vic Wyatt. Yep. And we're going. He's actually in one of my FTD Overdrive games.
Cool.
So we're going to have drinks afterwards. Howard Andrew Jones is going to be there again.
Very nice.
So I'm going to hook up with him, and I'm going to be getting a review copy of his new book.
What's his
Pathfinder book?
Oh, Pathfinder book. Okay.
Which, hey, you know what? It's a new Howard Andrew Jones book.
Right. Yeah. I don't mean like, just Pathfinder, but I haven't read any of his Pathfinder stuff because it's not where my interest lie.
Yep.
I was hoping that he had another one of his own books coming out, but that's cool.
He's working on one. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to be seeing any more De Beer and Asim because they didn't sell.
Right.
Which, to me, is totally insane, but they didn't. So
well, it's a hard thing to sell, right? Because he's not really he's not a name brand like George Martin or Erickson, so he's getting his foot in the door, and that brand of fantasy probably isn't as popular as generic fantasy.
No.
And I don't know what the distribution levels were like and all of that. I know when the first one I don't remember seeing it much of on the shelves. I know when the second one came out of Chapters, they had a pretty good initial shelf space on it, but yeah.
Anyway, so I'm going to be those are the people I'm going to have time to see at least for a little bit. But so, for example, I mean, I've got I'll actually link to my Gen Con calendar from the Shockuments because I've got it up in Google, and you can just go and view it. And basically, the Thursday I've got the games with JJ with the Lanza family, the Lanza guys.
Yep.
First thing Thursday morning, like 9.
Now, are you running them, or are you playing in their? Because they got his oldest son did the Rush.
Yes.
RPG.
Yeah. Giovanni did that. Yeah. I'm actually running for them.
Okay.
The last time that they gamed with the Cannibal. They're in my Centurion game. And yep. And I promised them that was when they launched a cow with a catapult or a horse with a catapult, and I promised them that we would have a game wherein not only was that allowed in the rules, it was the preferred method of doing things. Like crazy ass stuff is the preferred method. So that's what.
Right.
And that's the one with the horrible name of Fancy Pants.
Yes.
Or we'll change that to Fuck You Up. Fuck You Up the RPG.
Excellent.
So that's first thing Thursday morning. Then I've got at 2 p.m. I've got an FTD Overdrive game. Unfortunately, all the FTD Overdrive games are sold out. They sold out the first day.
Are they all? I mean, which is great for you. Are they all through like already backed Kickstart backers, or do you not know that information?
I have no idea. People actually paid for these games. Like they bought.
No, I know that, but I understand that. I was wondering if you happen to know if it was like from Kickstarters or just people in general. But
well, I know that Victor bought his ticket, which I mean, like he could have gamed in any of my games if he wanted to, but so there, I'm sure that a lot of people are people that knew it through Kickstarter.
Right.
I'll find out. It'll be very interesting, actually. Then that Thursday night is the game with Rebecca and Evan, and it's the Borderlands 2 ripoff, which uses the same system, but I'm going to call Face Explosion.
Okay, much better.
Yes. Now, Friday morning, I've got a panel with Jason Petrie, Indie RPG Matchmaker. And Jason asked me to join him on this, and it's going to be a little bit rough because the idea is that the audience will say, this is the kind of game I want to run. And we're supposed to set them up with, say, oh, what would be a really good system is this, or this would be.
Oh, really? That'll be awkward for you.
Because, and that's what I said to Jason.
I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, you're kind of not a huge system guy.
I agree. And when Jason asked me, I told him, I'm like, I don't think I'll be able to really help. So I might be able to be a cheerleader or something, but Jason's
Well, you
got.
might be able to. I was going to say, if you can distill the elements that they're trying to bring forth, and then maybe add input that way.
Yeah, that's the one thing. That's the.
Because there's a difference. Say you're running Borderlands. Well, okay, fine, but are you running Borderlands because you want to really play up the gun and run sort of aspects of Borderland, or it's more that sort of cartoony kind of over the top action? Because those are very different things. Like run and gun, you could run with a very technical system and like lots of loot, and or if you wanted to get silly, you've got two very drastic ways of interpreting Borderlands. So you might, there's value you could add there.
Possibly.
Sure.
I'm hoping. But
is it just the two of you running the panel, or
right now?
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know if Jason was able to con anybody else into it. I really hope so. I'm doing some time later on that's the Friday, and the Indie RPG Matchmaker is at 9 a.m. And again, I'll have a link to it. It's free, so you can just go and you don't have to buy tickets or anything like that. Then I'm volunteering as a quiet room monitor for 2-hour stretches. So basically, what's happening at Gen Con is they're creating a space for people to kind of decompress.
Okay.
That they've recognized that for some people it's just a little bit too much, and they need a quiet place to just go and sit down and recharge. Not like it's not for napping and stuff like that. It just for quiet conversation, reading, something like that. Yeah. So it's just, and they need moderators to be there, monitors to just
So you're a librarian shusher. Yep,
kind of.
Right.
Yep. So I got that for in total it's 5 hours. I did two 2-hour shifts and then a lunch break, and then at 6 o'clock on Friday I've got another Nefertiti Overdrive game. That's the one that Victor's in. So at 10, when that's done, we're going to go out for post junk kicking beers.
Excellent.
And that's going to be my I didn't mention Wednesday evening at 6 is the IGDN social, the Independent Game Developers Network social, which is open to like anybody that wants to come can. And I mean, I've posted it on Google Plus and Twitter, and even on like Swords Edge. But basically, it's at Low Millers, which is 301 West Washington, and it's running from 6 to 9 p.m. on the Wednesday. So that's going to be one of the chances to socialize. I'm going to try to take it easy then, because I got a game first thing in the morning. But I took Saturday morning off, so maybe Victor and I can have a few drinks, and anybody else who might be around. Can have drinks the Friday night, and then Saturday at 1 p.m. I'm doing a seminar. Now originally it was with Ben Werner, who did World of Dew, who we had on the show as well.
Yep.
But Ben had to pull out. I think he finally realized who he was actually on the panel with, and made up an excuse to just get the heck out of Dodge.
He's like, "Oh, I thought this was something important."
Wait, you? Oh God! So yeah, there's 9 people registered right now. There's a minimum of 10, so it might be canceled anyways.
Yeah.
The idea there was to talk about why you'd want to run a historical game, how you would do it, issues, concerns, inspiration, things like that. Because I mean, like Kiss My Axe, Centurion, and Nefertiti Overdrive are all on the scale of historical games, from either ahistorical to extremely historical. So I've got a little bit to talk about with that. And Ben, because World of Dew is set in historical Japan, would have been a great panel member as well.
Right.
So it's just me now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you like to talk.
Exactly. But I don't know if those 9 people might have been there because of World of Dew.
Yeah.
They're going to show up. Where's Ben? Okay, we're gone. See ya.
Well, you happen to have a little bit of knowledge about the ancients.
I know a little bit about Japan as well, so
yeah.
I might be able to talk a little bit about that. Then at 2 p.m., I'm going to be at the Independent Game Developer Network, the IGDN booth. So if anyone's got a Centurion or Kiss My Axe, or just wants to come and chat, to listen to the podcast, wants to come and chat, that's where I can be found from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock.
Now, are you going to have any copies of Nefertiti Overdrive available yet, or they're not quite ready yet?
No, they're not. They're not ready. Unfortunately, Rob ran into a couple of problems. So, and I didn't give him enough time. This isn't Rob's fault. It's going to come out on time in August. I
Right.
had I had hoped it would be ready for Gen Con, and then I realized that Gen Con actually is in August. It's July.
Yeah, they pushed it up quite a bit.
Yeah.
This 3 weeks or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if it had been like last year, the time of Gen Con last year, we would have totally been ready. When I handed it off late to Rob, it was slightly late getting to Rob, and then my the formatting that I did in Word was not playing nice with InDesign. So Rob
Okay.
unfortunately has had to go back and do a lot of extra work on it. Poor guy.
Hmm.
So it's going to be out on time. It's just not going to be out early, and it would have had to be early to get it to Gen Con.
Right. All right.
I'm really hoping we'll have the PDF out before I leave for Gen Con. That's my dearest wish. If that happens, I'm going to be very happy. If not, it's going to be like just after Gen Con,
Yeah.
uh, which is okay. It'll be on time. It won't be early. It'll be on time. And
Oh,
on time is actually quite a feat for
I
Kickstarter.
was going to say on time for Kickstarter is practically early.
Yeah, exactly.
So cool.
We will be selling Centurion and Sword Noir at the IGDN booth. This is going to be a little interesting test to see how well they sell at a convention, because I'm honestly not sure.
Yeah, because you sold. Well, did you? It was Kicks My Axe. You sold the 1 year, wasn't it? Or you just had copies.
I just had copies,
Yeah.
and as has been mentioned many times, I'm a very poor salesman of my own stuff. Um, I'm way too Canadian that way. I don't want to push my stuff in people's face,
Right.
and you have to. Like that's the whole thing you need to do, and I'm really uncomfortable doing that. So
Yeah.
I suck at selling my stuff.
Well, if you have in the booth, you've already got customers walking in, so that's half the battle.
Exactly. And I'm not even going to be like the IGDN has specific booth staff
Okay.
that's their job. Like they're there to work the booth and discuss games and hand things off and stuff and maybe provide contact information, stuff like that. But I won't be there to sell my games. I'll just be there to interact.
Right.
I think it's going to be a pretty long 2 hours. I don't know how many people are going to be showing up.
Well, I think every year I've been there, there's always been people. Like it's not a packed booth any year I've been there, but there's always people there, so it's not like you're entirely sitting around twiddling your thumbs.
No, I'm gonna have to engage people, engage them about the games that they're interested in. And IGDN actually has a really nice slew of games that's going to be coming, including like games by Mark Diaz Truman,
Okay.
who we've talked about a lot on the show as well.
Right.
Yeah, and then Saturday night we got another Nefertiti Overdrive game starting at 6. And then my Sunday, the only thing I've got on the Sunday is 10 a.m. Nefertiti Overdrive, 10 till 2, because I'm not leaving till Monday.
Oh, okay. Cool. Oh,
Yep.
so you got a pretty full schedule then.
Exactly. Like it's gonna be work. It's a working. If I don't have if the historical gaming seminar is canceled, which is entirely possible, my Saturday will be very free, which is
Yeah.
good. Other than that, no, it's very packed. But yeah, anyone's interested, I'm going to be putting the information up on the documents. Hit me up at Swords Edge or Swords Edge Publishing. I'll be putting all the information there. I would love to have people come by the historical gaming seminar, even if you're not interested in historical game, if you want to talk about accidental survivors, because I have a feeling that's not going to be that busy. And then, of course, the IGDN booth from 2 to 4. Absolutely come and say hi. I would love to talk to anybody that, number one, listens to our podcast, or like even better, actually buys or plays my games. But
Cool.
yeah, it's going to be a good time. But actually, I wanted Chris, you had mentioned on Google Plus that you had seen Ant-Man.
I did. So, I mean, without recapping the Google Plus feed, because that's anybody could read that, it was not a movie, and I think this is probably a fairly general statement, like across the board for a lot of people. But it wasn't a movie. When I heard Ant-Man was coming out, there was like, "Yay, Ant-Man!" It was like, "Oh, Ant-Man, okay."
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know who the character is, but I never read the comics. You see him pop up every now and then. He's like in the Lego Marvel video games. Like, I knew what his power set was, and that's about it. And I'm thinking, he's the guy who talks to ants and he can shrink. So it wasn't a movie that I was really excited about at all going to see. I just thought it was, I don't know, it just seemed like an odd movie for Marvel to make with all the other kind of big scope blockbusters that they've been putting out there. Like even, I'm trying to think of like Captain America is probably about their lowest key Marvel movie they've put out. And that compared to Ant-Man is still like several magnitudes above what, in my mind, I was picturing for an Ant-Man movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, to me, Ant-Man is maybe Black Widow-ish in the power structure, because he's just a dude with a suit. But
just very quickly, I wanted to thank Victor for watching, because I think he's our one viewer, and he does mention that if you're running 16 hours of games, you should be able to get your badge comped even after the fact. Didn't pay for my badge, Victor, so it's all good. But thanks for that. Anyways, back to Ant-Man.
Yeah, so for me, the only sort of thing that I thought was sort of compelling, that I was kind of like, I mean, other than it being, was I like Paul Rudd. As an actor, I find him very interesting and entertaining in movies. He has that sort of charm that he brings to his characters, which I think is really just him not really acting so much. It's just the way he is. So that was like, okay, I'll go to see a Paul Rudd movie where he happens to be playing Ant-Man. And then the reason we ended up seeing it was because my daughter really wanted to see it. So, okay, fine. So anyways, that all aside, it was awesome. It was very, very entertaining. It is a smaller scope movie. Like, there's some sort of world-reaching implications that the PIM particle technology has, and what the bad guys are trying to do with it. But the movie itself is about a father who's estranged from his family. Both fathers. So both the original Ant-Man, he has a problem with his daughter, and then Paul Rudd, the new Ant-Man, has a problem with his daughter, and you have this sort of mirror image of the two dads trying to make right by their children, and become sort of the heroes of and so that's really the whole.
I think you're bouncing in and out, buddy. If you're speaking right now, I can't hear you.
I am speaking.
No. Oh, and they're gone.
Right now.
Yeah, it's not good.
I can hear you. You talk. No.
You're just like fading in and out. And I don't know if that's going to come. I don't know if that's just your connection to me, or if that's going to come out on the actual recording. But now it's silent.
All right, so this out. I'm talking. I can.
Fuck. I'm wondering if you restart this or something.
Just a second. Let me try. Am I still breaking out?
No, actually. Oh, you were fine there for a bit, and then you kind of.
Weird, because you're coming perfectly fine.
Because I'm perfect.
So it must be my upload.
Yeah. You seem to be fine now, though.
Oh, he just went robotic.
So when you're fine, I'm a robot. Awesome.
Yeah. Well, now you're fine. So am I
fine too?
Fine.
Okay. We'll try to edit that out.
Okay. So yeah, Ant-Man. This could be a bit of a butcher. Depending. So the movie is a relatively small scope movie about the two dads and their families, and fine, like on the characters in terms of got to save the world, doing any of that. So they just kind of get to do their own thing. What I liked this movie was that it allowed a lot of character development, because you've only got Ant-Man and the bad guy, and a couple.
Yeah, it's happening again, dude.
Supporting character.
Damn it. It's really bad. I like 2-3 seconds and you're gone, and you're back for like 2-3 words, and then again. Can you hang up and call back in? You have the link?
Yeah.
The link again. You have the link? Nope. Okay. So Chris is one of the reasons why we left Skype, and unfortunately that was starting to happen on Hangouts. So I guess it's not the software, it's just the connection, whatever. But it's going to be interesting, because I'm actually a fan. I've been interested in the Hank Pym character, the character that Ant-Man is based on, since first when I was a really young kid, maybe not that young. The Micronauts had their own comic book, and And Victor's like, does the Canadian internet have smaller pipes or something? Hey, no, we've got big, huge, massive pipes. What are you saying there? Oh, those pipes. Yeah. No, I think Canada has more broadband access than in the States. Like, it's available more in more places. Like, for the percentage of population that has access to broadband, I think it's more than the States. But this. I mean, this happens anyways. Now Chris hasn't called back in, so I'm just gonna send him the link again just to make sure he can come back in. But yeah, the Micronauts had their own comic book, and in one of the episodes, or in one of the issues. Sorry, I'm typing an email while I'm talking, so things aren't going to work out very well. Let me just get this off to Chris, and then there we go. In one of the Micronauts episodes, Ant-Man, the Scott Lang Ant-Man, was a guest. Oh, there we go. Hey, Chris.
Sorry about that. I think the family upstairs was busy streaming.
Yeah, that'll do it. Anyway, sorry, man. While you were away, I had mentioned that, because I was trying to kill time, that I was introduced to Ant-Man through the Micronauts comic.
Okay.
Do you remember that comic?
The only time? That was before my time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you were saying it's a small scale movie. It's about the relationship between two fathers and their daughters.
Yeah, and they get to develop their characters and build them up and have sort of like, you know, if it wasn't a superhero movie, it would be that sort of standard kind of buddy action movie almost, or almost single person action movie. The special effects were good, like as you would expect from a Marvel movie, because it is a Marvel class movie in terms of the visuals. But they just seem to have a lot of fun. And there's a lot of good throwaway scenes in the movie. Like, there's one scene where they're fighting in their miniaturized form inside a briefcase. And I forget who says something. He says, like, I can't remember the exact phrase right now, but it would be like a Siri mistake. So as they're fighting, the iPod in there picks up on what it thought they said and starts, "You said play The Cure," and then The Cure starts playing, and little silly things like that. And you've got there's just a lot of cute little scenes in there, and it's just a great movie, like for an origin story, because Ant-Man is very much like a Spider-Man type of character, except without the tragedy.
Yep.
Like, he's upbeat, like Paul Rudd especially, but you know, he's like the good guy. He doesn't really have the original Ant-Man has a pretty horrendous backstory, as I've kind of learned recently. He was
not really.
Well,
I mean, yeah, there's issues with that, but the original, I mean, up until 1980s, late 1970s. I mean, he was his origin is fine. I mean, Hank Pym was like a science hero.
Yeah, not his origin, but like he abused his wife, and there's like a bunch of stuff like that. So that's the Paul Rudd version of Ant-Man, the new Ant-Man, is just, he was a criminal, like he was like a Robin Hood type criminal that got busted, and it's, I don't know, there's not really much to say about the movie because there's not a lot to it in terms of like a big story. You know, he gets the suit, he has to go in to, you know, rescue the Pym particle and stop the evil corporation from doing the thing, and that's how the movie plays out. There's not a lot of really twists and turns in there, but it's just good. It's well done, and I would put it up there in terms of how I rank Marvel movies, up there with Iron Man and the original Avengers, and just pure enjoyment. Like, I would highly recommend this movie to anybody that likes the Marvel, like, comic book movies, because it's so well done. And even, like, I would rank it up against the well, I like the original Spider-Man was lighter than the most recent reboot Spider-Man, but I mean, I prefer Garfield over what's his face for Spider-Man, but it was definitely a darker version of Spider-Man. But no, go see it. Like, it's a good movie. 40 minutes now on nothing, which is okay. But that's all I want to say about Ant-Man. Like, if you had doubts, just put the doubts aside and go see it. You'll be entertained. It's good. And stay long through the credits, because they have the kind of mid-credit movie bit, and then at the very end, there's another little bit.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, love those parts.
And your daughters would probably like it.
So my daughters are much more sensitive to movies than your daughters are, but we
Yeah.
just watched, for example, what did we watch recently? We watched A Knight's Tale.
Yep.
And what did we watch before that? I can't remember, but they're slowly moving into. I'm almost thinking like Guardians of the Galaxy. They might be okay with
Well, I
maybe.
thought you showed that to them for some reason.
No.
Okay.
And I'm trying to remember. I may have to rewatch it myself just to make sure, but I don't recall there being anything major like, that would offend them. Anything more than like what's in Knight's Tale, which there's a little bit of violence, but it's
I
not
mean,
that
there's
bad.
the scene where the one guy's skull gets crushed and all the blood runs out.
Then we don't. Yeah. We won't watch that time.
Um, and Iron Man or Ant-Man is definitely lighter. Definitely lighter. It's a funner movie.
Now,
There's
what Victor says is I think some of Ant-Man's past in the comics was very similar to Iron Man's with womanizing and alcohol abuse. Some of those comics got pretty serious in the early 80s.
that could be for the Hank Pym version, but not the
Yep.
Paul Rudd version. Yeah.
Yeah, not the Scott Lang. Scott
Yeah.
Lang. But again, the Hank Pym character that did kind of have a turbulent past in that he kind of failed a lot. He was like Reed Richards, but he like Ant-Man didn't take off, so he became like then he became Yellow Jacket, became Giant Man. Like he didn't have a kind of a through line. The one and when I was collecting comics and before, because his whole episode of wife abuse wasn't something that was trumpeted in the comics. So when I was when there was this thing called West Coast Avengers, his hero character in West Coast Avengers was Dr. Pym. And what he did was he had used Pym particles to keep gadgets all over his, like he had all these pockets with all these different gadgets, and he was like a science hero. And I've always kind of dug science heroes. So at that time, I liked the Hank Pym character, and then you find out like that there's this, backstory of him beating his wife, which is much worse in the Marvel Ultimate Universe. The Hank Pym in that one is brutal.
And it's so with knowing that there's some great scenes then with Hank Pym in the Ant-Man movie. There is an awesome scene that I don't want to give away because it's so well done. There's a lot of little throwaway scenes that the more you know, the more you can sort of pick up on and maybe see ahead of time. But it's whatever. Just go see it. Like you'll love it. It's great.
Yeah, I definitely want to.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, the episode that I want to do is to talk about starting campaigns, and this came about because the playtest and the campaign for the game that we're now going to call League of Extraordinary Misfits is done. That kind of pulp adventure one is done, and we're starting on a new campaign. And the campaign started because I wanted to test a new system. And so, of course, to properly test the system, you do need to actually play it. So we're creating a campaign. So the idea of starting campaigns kind of came to me. Now, Chris, I mean, you run a lot of games as well. So you've obviously been in this position yourself many times.
Sure.
Now, sometimes it's because we get bored with a campaign. Sometimes it's because a campaign has run its course. But in the end, at some point, you're going to be starting a new campaign. So I guess the first step in that, I mean, is it generally you get an itch? You have an idea and you have an itch and you want to play that? Or is it, okay, I need a campaign and you're casting about for ideas before you find one? Like, how do you find generally it happens to you?
I think it's usually every campaign is going to start to run into a spot where it starts to feel a little dry and stale. And sometimes that's because you're not enjoying the direction it's going, or because just sort of, it could even be simple like just timing, and there's too much downtime between when you play, so your ideas start to get stale, and it's just not as interesting to you, so you start looking at other things. So I would say that the two main reasons that I'll start a new campaign are I'm getting bored of the one I'm running, or there's a new hotness out there. And whether or not that new hotness is a new game system, that's come out, like, when Star Wars Edge came out, or now with Feng Shui 2 coming out, I'm kind of itching to play that. But sometimes it's also just because I have a better idea of something that I want to run with whatever the current system is that we're doing, and that idea might even stem, as it has before, from something that we kind of did in a current campaign, sort of as a side note, but then we went off, and I'm now finding the side note to be more interesting than the main storyline. So there's a few reasons, and there's not really like a golden reason. It's, kind of can be anything, but usually you are going to run a little stale, and then you see something that's new and exciting. That's, I think, pretty much the reason for most people. The exception would be some people that can game regularly and actually finish campaigns. Yeah. I'm not one of those people. It very rarely happens. So when we finish a campaign, like for us, a campaign that's successfully finished would be like the starter box right now for a 5e. Like, if we finish that, at the rate we're going, like, that'll be a huge landmark achievement for us, and that is in no way really a campaign. It's not insignificant. I mean, because that starter box is quite huge. Like, it's not an adventure; it's several adventures, and we've added to it and done stuff with it. So it's not like we're not running it like, start to finish really quickly. But again, how frequently we get together, it's dragging on longer than probably a normal starter set would.
Right.
But I have ideas for how that's going to go, and then I picked up the Princes of the Apocalypse, which is sort of basically the re-envisioning of Tomb of Elemental Evil, or Temple of Elemental Evil.
Yeah.
For 5e. So I've picked that up and I started reading through that. So we might do that next. I don't know. Other people have kind of ideas, and like I said, Feng Shui 2 is going to be out probably September, and I wouldn't mind playing that. Or getting back to Star Wars. And then I don't know if other people want to run stuff, but usually I'm the one running things, because I'm a little more regular than some of the other guys that want to run stuff.
Right.
But those are my reasons, and yours, I know you like tinkering with like your own systems.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, since Sword Noir came out, the only time we did anything. No, there have been a few times. They weren't campaigns, though. They were adventures, because it was 3 to 4 sessions the longest. We did Old School Hack.
Yep.
Because as soon as I found that game, I had to run it, and I loved it. And then we also did Esoterrus.
Now, I thought, wasn't Todd running a 5e game, or was that not with you?
It wasn't with me. In Todd's games, I'm a playtester in Todd's campaigns.
Okay.
So I was a playtester for Killshot, and I'm a playtester for Highplane Samurai. Again, I'm a huge fan of Highplane Samurai. It's like, honestly, built for me. It's a very different game from Killshot. As much as I enjoyed playing Killshot, and Todd knows I'm not a complex system dude, so Killshot you wouldn't be able to sell it to me. Right. Highplane Samurai is literally number one, like the Wuxia Western, and then number 2, it's a very simple system that's also like robust.
Yeah. Now, I played in an adventure of that. Is that still using his? I forget what he called the system, the story.
The screenplay.
Screenplay. Yeah. Okay.
It has evolved, but yes, the basics are the same.
Cool.
But yeah, so for me, it's new systems. Now, when I was playtesting Sword Noir, that kind of the campaign was built for that. Not so much the campaign was built for that, but the tone, the genre was built for that, because I was specifically trying to go after an idea. Kiss My Axe actually came after the campaign, because we had this huge, long Viking campaign that honestly was like a year and a half, 2 years, which I was running in True 20, and then wanted to build something more specific, and did Kiss My Axe. Centurion was the same thing. So a lot of the times for me, it's the system. I want to try out, build the new system. And for League of Extraordinary Misfits, it was the promise of I'm going to run you 2 different games, 2 different sessions, and you choose which one you want to continue. And I promise we'll stay at it for a year.
Okay.
And it was League of Extraordinary Misfits that got chosen. So we did like this pulp adventure, this globe-spanning mythic pulp adventure for a year, and that came to a conclusion. Again, like you said, I'm the kind of person that honestly has real problems finishing a campaign because there's the new shiny. In this case, we actually finished it. The one thing that's happened in between finishing Nefertiti Overdrive, starting League of Extraordinary Misfits, and then what's happening this time is I'm preparing my campaigns differently. Not even preparing my campaigns. I'm deciding on my campaigns differently. Now, what I used to do before I was building systems was the campaign. The idea would come first. I would have an idea for a campaign, and it was almost guaranteed to be running D&D because that's what I was generally running all the time.
Right.
Until I got True 20, and then it would be running True 20. Anyways, one of the things that I love about Jason Petrie's game Spark was the building of the setting, which is his game is a 2-part game. First you build the setting, then you challenge all the beliefs that you built into the setting. Jason is a cerebral game designer. I like to punch people in the face. So
yeah,
I love the idea of building the campaign, but then I also want to just get into that campaign and start having like action scenes kind of thing.
Yeah.
But that building the campaign part, I love. So that's one of the things that I did for Nefertiti Overdrive, and that's what's happening with this new campaign, where it's. I mean, it's so those of you that backed Nefertiti Overdrive or are going to get it later. This game, this development system is going to be in it as well. But it's basically the player telling you they want to play, and this is the first time. What I do is I would go for them each time we've done a new campaign in auto. I said, okay, I kind of want to run this. 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 Which of those 4 ideas do you like the best? Like I've always had a problem picking one idea because there's so many awesome ideas out there.
Mm-hmm. Like we usually have a bit of a committee decision when it starts to picking up a new campaign. Someone will present an idea, and then really quickly you get a pretty good feel around the table of excitement level. So if everybody's like, all right, fine, I won't bring that one up again. But sometimes if one person has a great idea and everybody else is sort of soft on it, and they can sell it well enough, then you can sort of grow that infectious sort of excitement to it, which may only last a couple sessions and then peter out anyways. But we kind of do that sort of committee thing, and there's typically only a couple of us that are regularly running games, and so usually sometimes I get tired of running games, but I've found out personally I'm a terrible player. Which, I mean, I can play the game. As I get playing, I start to get bored because I find it very, I don't know what's the word I'm looking for, dull. Maybe not dull. But, like, I've been running games more than I've been a player for most of my life. There was a period there where I was playing more than running, and at that point I would get really into a character, but that was back in, like, the high school days, so we would play, like, every weekend, sometimes twice a week, all weekend long, whatever, and I could really get into that character. Now, I find that if I'm playing a character, once every month, for a few hours, I just don't get into it the same way I did before, or have these ideas of how I want the character go, and they just don't work out, and then I start to get bored. When I'm running a game, I have so much more to do.
But also you have so much more control, and I think this is one of the reasons why I'm really enjoying playing High Plains Samurai, because the character that I'm creating there, Mauser, I've got, not only do I have total control over it, there's so much more character heft to it, rather than, like, for example, if you've got like a 3.5 character, I don't think 5e is as bad about that. I think 5e has a lot of stuff in it for role-playing. But 3.5, a lot of it was mechanics. And so your character is mechanical rather than like narrative.
Yeah.
And the simpler system is, and hopefully my systems, but definitely High Plains Samurai, there's so much narrative in the characters that, number one, your character is much more about describing what's cool, and then number two, the game itself supports and rewards the development of the character. So I think that's one reason why I'm totally cool being a player. But I totally understand where you're coming from, Chris. I'm kind of the same way.
Yeah, I think it's that, and I think the control aspect for sure. But I find when I'm a player, I have to work harder than when I'm a GM. Because there's far more times as a player when it's like, all right, go, and you're like, crap. Whereas within the GM, I'm like, no, you go, and I can just pass it off if I don't have something I want to do. But then when I have something I want to do, I just do it. So it's less work. Although, you know, a lot of people would say that being a GM is a lot more work, and in certain ways, sure, it is, because you've got this whole world to worry about. If you're that kind of GM, which I am not, I'm very much, yeah, there's a world here, but I'm kind of, here's the little spotlight that we're worrying about right now, and that world stuff we'll fill it in as we need to, and I can pull from it. It's like a big empty bag that I can just pull stuff out of at random if I need to.
But that kind of segues into talking about preparation. But before we do that, I just want to quickly go to what Victor wrote. I remember when you guys were very much D20 Modern on the podcast. Was that before the True 20 transition? I mean, we were a modern podcast, particularly, but I was playing D20 Modern because D20 Modern to me was a much better version of 3.5 than 3.5 was. But then, yes, I did transition into True 20 after we started the podcast, because the podcast actually is kind of old. It was like 2006 when we started this bitch.
Yeah, because True 20 wasn't around while we were doing the Modern 20 stuff.
No. Yeah, but I did really like D20 Modern as the D20 system, but then True 20 started my transition into simpler and simpler games. But Chris, you and I are very similar, and I wanted to talk about preparation because for myself, like you said, I don't prep a huge amount of the world, of the setting, of anything else before I embark on a campaign, because I like to allow the players to do that. Because like, now, again, the system that I'm using right now, where they literally build the campaign, where they tell me what they want in it, from the genre to specific themes to the PC's goals, like all that kind of stuff, that's one way of doing it. But even if you're not doing that, even if you say, okay, we're going to do, for example, like Sword Noir, we're going to do Sword and Sorcery Hard Boiled, you let them, if they want to go somewhere and do something, you let them, and then you let them explain what's there and who they're meeting. And when things start to flag, when things start to slow down, you can jump in. And generally, they've given you enough grist for your mill that you can build something pretty awesome from it.
For sure. And so there's two types. Like the current campaign, like I said, the main one I'm running right now is the 5e starter set. So that's largely developed.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a map and there's places to go that are detailed, but there's other stuff that I'm kind of like filling in as we go along. Because I need some filler, or I come up with a cool idea that I want to drop in there. But also, now that's not really in terms of campaign building, but I'm very much listening to what they're saying at the table, and you are too. And I think any GM should be listening to what your players are saying and not just pushing your players through your ideas. But there's a good balance you have to do, and this part of it is the adventure at the time, but part of it is also building the fuller world, because if you're only pushing everything out to your players, then they're constantly just reacting to what you're giving them, and they're always they're always the last to know. Whereas if you're listening to their players and they're coming up with ideas, you don't have to fire it right back at them right away, but if they've come up with an idea that works, let that idea work maybe in a little bit. Or there's some NPC that they're really drawn onto for whatever reason, give them that NPC, because the most memorable way you can sort of make a world come to life is with NPCs that they're interacting with and they're having fun with. So in our 5e campaign, the stupidest thing that happened was, you remember the goblin you run into in the Red Brands?
Yeah.
He's now their mascot.
Yep. That happened in my daughter's campaign too. He's the bartender. They took over the bar, and he's now like the manager bartender there.
Yeah, so in this one, he follows them along. He like disappears for a while, and he'll come back with like a new sword or a suit of armor that he's wearing that's like way too big for him, and he just disappears, and shit happens because I can do whatever I want with him, but he's dumb and he's entertaining. And there's other little things you can pull in from what your players are saying. The thing I hate most as a player, absolute most is when you're faced with a make a choice and you don't have enough information,
Yep.
or there's all this stuff going on and and you're stumped for an idea. It drives me insane because everything seems like it's either the right choice but it doesn't work, or it's the wrong choice and you have no idea why, because you can see it in video games, where those point and click video games where you got to
Yep.
click every pixel on the screen to find the clue.
Yep.
I hate RPGs that work that way.
Yep.
And I've been through those adventures, and as a player, nothing pisses me off more than to have to say, oh, well, you didn't say you went into the library to pick up the book on the 5th shelf.
Right.
Seriously, that's... Gah.
And it slows down the role playing game. And what's interesting is you had earlier said in your in what you're saying there was that this isn't really about campaign building, but it is. It's just a different way of doing it. And my problem is I can't really give advice for people to prep for campaigns anymore because I do so little preparation. I enjoy so much the improv GMing where you're riffing off what the players are doing, when you're giving them a lot of agency, and they're firing it at you, you're firing it back at them. There's great cooperation where you're writing the story that's developing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, which is counter to what I need to do for writing role-playing games, because for Nefertiti Overdrive, I've had to write. I'm working on my third adventure for Nefertiti Overdrive. All of them are written very precise.
Right.
These are the locations. This is what you're going to find there, which is not how I play at all. Those people that have been to Sargent Publishing, the website, have seen the one pages that I would do for Sword Noir, where I literally have one page with the idea of the concept, then some interesting places they might go to, and some people they might meet, and some quick stats. And one of the really good things about having a simple system is you don't need to worry about massive stat blocks. You can stat it out. Like we were, what were we playing? Anyways, we were playing League of Extraordinary Misfits, which I can stat out an NPC or a challenge or whatever, like literally in 3 to 4 seconds. And it's not because I developed the game. It's just you have 4 things you need to stat out, and you just look, okay, is this something that would be easy for a professional, whatever. Okay, it's this die, and boom, you're done, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's tough. If you spend all that time preparing, the problem is that you're straitjacketing your players into kind of what you wrote. If you're not willing to riff, if you're not willing to improv GM, then you are it is kind of like railroading. Which is not fun.
Well, yeah, I would agree. If it's a hard railroad where they don't really have choice, but you can railroad with the illusion of them not really being on the railroad. So if you need them to go somewhere, then whether or not they turn left or right, they're going to end up there anyways, if they don't know differently.
Right.
Now there's a whole string of reasons why that's kind of cheating in a GM sense, but to be fair, we've been doing this for a long time, and both with fairly well-established groups, so we kind of have a good feeling for our players, and they have an understanding what we're going to be throwing at them. So we're taking some sort of shortcuts.
Oh, just lost you again, dude. Damn it. Someone watching Walking Dead upstairs or something?
Shouldn't be.
Oh, you're back.
Okay. Back. So I think maybe new advice for new GMs, because I don't think we have to tell long-time GMs how to GM.
Right.
They'll have their style, right or wrong, whatever it works for them. So if you're new to this, I think you should start by running some pre-made adventures.
Yeah, agreed.
Just to get that, how an adventure is written and structured, and run into those stumbling blocks where you get to the end of the fork in the road and the players are expected to go right and they want to go left. Well, now you're going to have to improv that a bit. Your choices are you could make them go right and not really tell them, or you let them go left and you kind of riff on that. But you have that safety net of that pre-written campaign or adventure to fall back on. So I think that's a great way to start out if you're new to GMing. And then once you get a little more experience, what I like to do is for my sort of source references, I will pick up one thing I've used in the past because I got it as a gift was a atlas to World of Warcraft. I've never played the video game. Well, I have played it, but I didn't get it because I played the video game. Someone just thought I did and gave me the book. But it's a cool book. It's just full of maps and names and places and stuff. And I can draw from that and plop it into anything, like fantasy or sci-fi or whatever, because it's a map. And it's just names. And sometimes for an RPG, all you need is places and names.
Right.
And then your players will sort of, I want to go here. Well, okay, what's there? Well, here we go, page 45. This is the map, and these are the people that are there. And then you start building this web or framework. And as you're doing that, the one thing you really should be doing as a GM, unless you have a really good memory, is I like to start. And recently I've been only doing this, and the reason I've been doing this more recently is because my memory is not as good as it used to be, and I'm playing less frequently, so I have to keep notes. Yeah. But I've been shorthanding and bullet pointing a lot of stuff that goes in the game, so I can kind of go back and backfill it later, flesh out an NPC a little bit more, or connect some dots, or these two people that were seemingly unrelated, but now maybe if I add this third person in, or a location, or whatever, some way to connect the two, now they've suddenly become much more interesting. They're no longer just footnotes. Now there's this triangle of an investigation or a mystery or something that they have to work on. And so you can kind of, even if you start with very little for a campaign, maybe a map of a city or whatever, you can start filling it in and making this like a mesh of information for players to look to, so that you're never really stumbling as a GM. Which isn't to say you'll never stumble. Every GM stumbles. But if you have something to draw from quickly, then you can fill it in. And as a player, I don't like to see a GM that's spinning his wheels, and I know every GM's kind of making stuff up as they go along, but you don't really want to see that, you know what I mean? Like, you don't want that illusion of, well, what comes next? So I don't know. And then have them just make some shit up. You want there to at least be some idea that there is sort of a start and some goal that you're working towards. Because if everything in the story is strictly made up, then your actions have very little impact other than, well, you might die right now.
It's also very difficult to create some kind of coherence in a game like that. If the person doesn't understand what's happening and they're just making up as they're going along and totally just following the flow, in the end, when looking back, the player's going to be like, well, then why did this happen? This doesn't make any sense. And why? And suddenly you're trapped. Now, you can recover from that. Like you said, making notes. If you're making notes and you realize there isn't a lot of coherence, in the downtime between games, you need to go through your notes and figure out what the pattern is.
Exactly.
So you can impose some kind of pattern for the next game, and then as you're going along later, they're going to look back and go, oh, I see. Oh, and no, that wasn't planned. I had to go back and figure that out because I was pulling too much stuff out of my ass, wasn't paying attention to what I was doing, and totally went off the rails. Yeah. But you can save that later on. And I mean, a little bit off topic, but you had mentioned about references, and I think that's super important, especially if you're going to play a complex system. If you're going to be playing a system like D&D or like Savage Worlds or like GURPS or something like that, it's more difficult to improv GM. It's more difficult to go off the rails because it does require a certain amount of preparation. What you can do is have sheets of stat blocks that can be used for all sorts of different things. Listen, an orc stat block can be any general monster. It doesn't matter. There are tons of human stat blocks in D&D 5e, whether it's for an acolyte or a mercenary or a thief or whatever. You've got those. You've got a list of names that you can pull so that you're not just trying to figure out a name off the top of your head. You've got a list of names you can pull from. And you've got, for example, even like prices for bars or names of taverns, just references that you can have so that if you do need to pull something out of your butt, if they are going off course and you are a little bit nervous about improv GMing, if you have all this reference material backing you up, it's a lot easier. You're working with a safety net. Again, if you're working with a simpler system, that's not so necessary. I generally still have, especially like for historical games, lists of names, lists of places, things like that I can refer to. But yeah, having references is like super important if you are going to improv GM.
Yeah. Now, how do you typically like to start your campaign? I mean, the obvious stereotype is 5 guys in a bar.
Well, one of the things that we have been doing consistently since we playtested Sword Noir is having character creation sessions where they need to figure out why they are together. And you also want a character creation session so that each player, their character has a niche that they can fill, so that they can have spotlight. You don't want, I was about to say you don't want a team of thieves. You can have a team of thieves. One of them is a pickpocket. One of them is a second story man. One of them is a shyster. One of them's like, so everyone's got to have a chance. Everyone's got to have a chance for their character to have the spotlight. But that also allows you to say, okay, why are you guys together? Like, what is the point? So that kind of short circuits that whole they all meet up in a bar thing.
Right. Yeah, because they all met up in a bar because they're already know why they're there because they're discussing their next heist or whatever the deal is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's difficult. So the first session is a lot like, well, we were just talking about Ant-Man, which is an origin movie, right? The first session has to do a lot of the same things that an origin movie has to do. It has to introduce us to the characters. Now, if you've got a character creation session, that's not necessary, but there might be some important NPCs that need to be introduced. The rules of the world need to be somehow illustrated. Now, this isn't just the system rules, but if you're playing, for example, a lot of fantasy draws from Western Europe, and so we generally have a good frame of reference for that. But if you're playing in something different, if you're playing on, for example, Barsoom on John Carter's Mars, and a lot of the people haven't read the Edgar Rice Burroughs novels, you have to be explicit about what the rules are here, about who the different races are, how they interact, what can be expected and not expected. You need to, if they don't have a frame of reference, you need to build the frame of reference, and you need to do it without being Basil exposition and just explaining everything. And for the love of God, don't give them 10 pages to read before the game. If nobody would ask you to read 10 pages of introduction before going to see a movie. And it's kind of the same thing. You need to do it in the game, in the session.
And then you should also allow, because I've been in those sort of games before where the GM had everything down to the nitty-gritty detail, and then you almost got penalized for not knowing what he knew.
Right.
Which is not fair, because he handed you 10 pages and you didn't read them all, or you just didn't care. So you have to allow your players some leeway, because characters usually know more about the world than players. Even if your players can recognize from a description what a monster is and all of that, your characters will know stuff that the players don't. Right. So you have to allow for those sort of things. And the analogy I've often given is, we in the modern day, like, I went to school for what I went to school for, and I have my job. And yet, I know all these things that are outside of that because I might have done them once, or heard a story, or saw it on TV, or watched a movie, or whatever, or read it on the internet. So there's this wide mesh of knowledge that I have that isn't specifically on my, we'll say, character sheet.
Mm-hmm.
And the characters have this too. Like, they don't have the internet in fantasy, but they have bars and stories and histories and all these things. So, I mean, I know when we first, like, I remember way back when we were first started playing, we would try and reboot these campaigns and say, well, your characters are new, so they don't know what a beholder is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because they never ran into him. Well, yeah, you're right. He never did. But somebody did.
Yeah.
And somebody told a story, or wrote it in a book, or there was a campfire story. So as I've kind of matured and grown, I'm far more lenient on those things, and I let players bring in sort of like world knowledge that they've had from playing D&D for years. Not necessarily like campaign knowledge, maybe because they read the adventure ahead of time because everybody bought the box set. That stuff is its own area, but characters, yeah, your first level character, but you know what a dragon is, even if you've never fought one, or you've been a ranger, like your first level ranger. Well, you went to ranger school, sort of thing, so you've learned things outside of your realm, and everybody else has. So back to my sort of your Barsoom point, like, don't penalize your players. First of all, if they don't know something that you should expect them to know, but also don't penalize them because they seem to be acting outside of what you believe their character realm to be, because there's all these ways that a character in that world would learn knowledge beyond what they were immediately exposed to.
And it's, I mean, I could go into a huge rant about this, but one of the things that I'm explicit about in FTD Overdrive is there's nothing wrong with metagame knowledge as long as it doesn't short circuit the fun. And a lot of times, a GM is upset that a character knows what a beholder is, because, or a player knows what a beholder is, and something the character does is because it's competitive.
Right.
Oh, you beat my my encounter. Well, the point of the encounter being there was for people to have fun.
Yeah.
And if they're having fun, who the fuck cares? Like, seriously.
Yeah.
Metagame, table talk, whatever the fuck you need to do to have fun at this game, do that. Because then what they're going to remember is that dude's an awesome GM. That girl's an awesome GM. Like, when we were playing in her game, we had so much fun. They're not going to be thinking, oh, we totally knocked, like, we totally cheated. No, they're not going to be saying that. They're not going to care about that. They're going to care about having fun.
That's right. And that's ultimately you want to have as you want your guys to have fun, your players to have fun.
And an interesting way to short circuit that whole problem that we were talking about is, you know what? Now, number one, I would never want to play literal Barsoom. I wouldn't want to play Edgar Rice Burroughs' Mars, because I would probably want to do things differently. I would pull a lot of stuff from it because there's a lot of awesome stuff to use, but I mean, it would be my own thing. But an easy way to short circuit a lack of player and character knowledge is, you know what? The characters would know. If the character says this is how it works, this is how it works. I know I planned something differently, but you know what? This is the way they want it to work. Let's do it that way. Let's see where this takes us.
Yeah. And so there was a thread floating around G Plus not too long ago about how to be a good player.
Right.
I don't know if you read that or not.
Yeah.
When I first read that, I actually read it from How to Be a Good GM.
Mm-hmm.
And now for anybody that doesn't have that thread, I don't know if you'll dig it in the documents or not, but I mean, a lot of our followers are probably following us on G Plus anyways and might have seen it. But there was a couple key points in there that really stood out for me, because I hadn't really, I mean, I've kind of did the things that they talked about, but it wasn't sort of like, oh yeah, I'm doing that. Like they highlighted this thing, and the one concept that really stood out for me was how to keep a story flowing. And the reason it stood out is because after reading it, it's like, holy crap, I've done it, and I know other players have done it. But the idea was, so say you have a fighter and a monk, and this is right from the example in the article, and there's a guy there that's doing something, and the fighter goes to deck the guy.
Mm-hmm.
So the monk player is like, well, I'm a pacifist. I stop the fighter from decking the guy. And those guys might think they're role-playing, and there's a little bit of a role-playing moment where, you know, you have the monk stop the fighter. Right. But it's not a huge role-playing moment, because really all you've done is nullified an action and possibly gotten an argument at the table because, oh, you can't do that, make it a hit roll, or whatever the case may be, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've stalled it. Let the fighter punch the guy. Mm-hmm. Don't, as a player, don't cock block other players. And I think as a GM, that holds true too. To what you said, you know, if the player comes up with a cool idea, even if it wasn't how you originally intended it, this is the player's idea. And if you let them kind of bring their ideas forward into it, that's more memorable for them.
Right.
And not to say that whatever idea you might have wasn't good, but I think it's more empowering for your players to bring their good idea forward. So to this example, let the guy deck them, and then now you have something to act on. The monk can now get involved, and there's an actual story moment flowing on because the guy got decked, and now the monk has to react to that, and now the fighter might be in trouble with the law. You have far more to go on than just, okay, well, nothing happened.
And in most, like, if you look at movies, novels, stuff like that, there is occasionally scenes where one character will stop another character from doing something. But generally, it's something super important, not just punching a guy. I mean, it's something much more major. Instead, what they have is characters reacting to what other characters do. Right? And again, you're not nullifying a character action. You're building your own character. And as a GM, what that is the setting is a character as well. So you're having the PCs react to the setting, and when you are responsive to what the players want for their characters, the setting is responding as a character as well. It's a lot easier. It does not create conflict among the players, which is the important thing, because again, everyone wants to have fun.
Right.
But We've gone on. I don't know. I honestly don't know how long we've gone on because I don't know how much I'm gonna have to cut
Yeah.
from technical reasons. But I think if I had to give one piece of advice for that first session, it's try to think of it like an origin movie and try to put everything that's important in there, but be flexible to what your players want and how they react to it.
That's good advice. If I had, I'd certainly echo that, and I might add that for that, you have to hook them in on that first session. It's like a good TV show or like anything. Give them a reason. The first session, let me actually back up. Your first session will probably stumble because everybody's, even if you've made your characters and kind of you all have your own mind of how your characters are going to work, it's not going to be like that immediately at the table. Like it takes a little bit. Characters might hit the ground running, but they're kind of stumbling and getting up to speed. So your first session, you got to hook them in and give them something to do, but don't expect like all the fireworks to go off that first session. It ramps up a little bit. Give them a hook and let them go with it. And then, like, I don't know, for our campaigns, I'd say it usually takes like 3 or 4 sessions before people really start fitting into their roles.
Well, give them a chance. Give them a chance to shine as their characters. Give them a big success
Yep.
to begin with, and then leave it on a cliffhanger, and that
Yep.
should bring them back.
Yep.
You want them to love, because if they love their characters, they're going to be investing more in the game. The more they invest in the game, the more it's their game, and they want it to succeed. So,
Excellent.
yeah. So, anyways, that's it. We were going all over the place. I think mostly because both Chris and I are very much improv GMs. So campaigns are more about ideas and frameworks than about building things. But yeah, if you're flexible and you can put that prep in and still improv, or if you're comfortable improving, you don't need to put a lot of prep in, and it's awesome.
Yep. All
Cool.
right. Cool.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me, Chris, and thanks for talking about Ant-Man. I definitely want to go see it now.
Highly recommended it. All right. Good night.
Good night from Fraser.
Good night from Chris.
And we shall talk to you all later, post Gen Con.
That's right. Good night, Victor.
Good night, Victor.